So let us start. Hello everyone. I'm delighted to be with you, Philippe Marbet, editorial director of La Tribune magazine, La Tribune du Dimanche magazine. So of course on Sunday you have to buy La Tribune magazine. Thanks a lot for being with us. We'll be talking about the shock of realities. There are lots of significant realities in economics, demographics. At the Cercle des Economistes, we talk a lot about demographics. So economics could boil down to demographics, and the economic history boils down to the history of demographics. So we'll be talking about youth, the shock of youth in the north. Young people can think about their future. Will there be enough young people at a time when the demographic rate is decreasing? Are we going to live in a world characterized by lots of senior people in the south, lots of young people in the countries of the south, especially in Africa? And hope for the future, hope for development. But young people should be offered a future with some challenges, climate and employment. So we have an exceptional panel of experts with us. I will introduce them very shortly. I will be starting with Nouzha CHEKROUNI, Polity Center for the New South. She will be talking about Morocco. Morocco will be hosting the next Football World Cup. Sports integration. Didier, the CEO of Cityz Media. Didier knows very well football. He has been an entrepreneur in many sectors, and he will be able to share his experience. Danielle ALAKIJA, president of the SOLI group, maybe she would be talking in English. Welcome, Danielle. Thanks a lot for being with us. Then we have Mamadou Touré, the Minister for Youth Promotion, Professional Integration and Civic Service of Côte d'Ivoire. He will be touching upon African youth and the hopes that go with it. And we have Florence BRILLOUIN, working for the International Organization of Francophonie, OIF. So we will be listening to Patrice Geoffroy, our economist. He will define the framework for this debate. Then I will go around the table. You'll be able to express yourself following the order that I've just described. And then it will be a bit messy because we have some young people. So you young people, you can express your views, and there will be a roving mic. When you talk about youth-related policies, it's important to give the floor to young people. Patrice, over to you. Thanks a lot, Philippe. Good morning to all of you. This is the 25th anniversary of the Rencontre des Economistes. So I'm delighted to take part in this session about youth policies. And there are different events that are being organized. You have some agora dedicated to youth, and tomorrow morning there will be an agora that will be devoted to health. So we are invited to look at the different realities. Instead of talking about micro-business education, I will give you an appraisal of the different types of realities for the young people, and I will be focusing on three angles. Of course, it's important to get dedicated policies, but we shouldn't bequeath a complex world to the young generations. There are three types of debts that are not under control, and we need to pay heed to these. First, climate debt. So I will be fast. We are in Aix-en-Provence, 40 degrees this afternoon, and there's a concern, 1.5 degree more versus the pre-industrial era, and beyond a world of 2 degrees. We are in uncharted territories. The world won't be less complex, but more chaotic. out of control. I'm not going to elaborate on that. What is important is not to bequeath to young people a world that can't be controlled in terms of climate. Debt, public debt. This is another type of debt. When you look at the data of the past 20 years, global public debt is nudging 100% of GDP. It has increased twofold in the countries of the North, and this is a source of concern in France, in Italy, and in Europe. But it's also true throughout the world. And of course, this is a source of concern. Today, in 2025, more than 3 billion inhabitants working in some countries where the debt service payments are higher than the budgets devoted to education and health. So much for the second debt. Now the third debt, that is key, and it is in line with what Philippe Mabi said, aging. We shouldn't bequeath young people a world with lots of old people. You have the issue of pensions, but in 2050, people under 20 years of age will be fewer, because we're 15% of the global population, worth 13%, and the over 65s will be between 16 and 20%. There will be different issues to consider, and this will be a burden for the active populations, and this burden is a debt. Of course, there will be a debate, and I don't want to be gloomy today. We have a panel of experts open to the world, open to Africa, so we can be very hopeful. So Africa will be the emerging continent in 2050 with lots of young people, and it will be a kind of exception, but there are two prerequisites. First, budgets dedicated to cooperation should be higher than those that will be dedicated to erecting walls. There have been lots of walls that have been built. I don't want to mention the US, but the number of walls has increased tenfold in the space of 12 years, and they should be able to get access to disruptive technologies. AI, we hope that AI will be able to be disseminated in Africa. Philippe, over to you. Thanks a lot for this great introduction. Allow me to echo what you said about walls, and during this session we will try to build bridges. We will hand over to young people, but we will start with Florence BRILLOUIN. At OIF, you conducted a massive survey in 2020. Remember, 2020, we were beset by COVID, have young children. It was a tough year for young people in France, in the world over, and people suffered from mental problems, and it was a lost year for many people. As part of the survey, what did the young people tell you regarding their hopes and concerns? Thanks a lot for inviting me, and I'm delighted to share my perception, the perception of the organization of Francophonie regarding the world in the 5 continents. In 2025, as part of the anniversary of the Francophonie, the 50th anniversary of Francophonie, we launched a survey. 93 countries, I think, 193 countries after the UN, and of course we can analyze lots of trends, and you have different young people in the north, in the south, across the 5 continents. And following this survey, there are 3 major concerns that emerged: education, training, environment. And if you look at the findings of this survey, and if you look at the surveys that have been conducted in France, in the countries of the north and the south, these concerns are being shared. These are common concerns. whether you're talking about the richest countries or the least advanced countries. So this is the bottom line. So OIF, our organization, was equipped with an economic strategy and a digital strategy. Why? In order to fast track the process, because there's a major challenge at OIF, i.e. To take into account employment and employability of young people. So we said that we had to pull out all the stops in order to co-build some policies in order to support young people so that they could be trained, so that they could acquire better skills, so that they could be better integrated in a professional manner with them and not without them. So following upon what Patrick said, I would say that in Francophonie, this is not a space with walls. It's a smooth environment with good cultural, economic, commercial, educational bonds and relations between the member states. So beyond the walls, I mean, we try to shape policies for young people. An organization such as OIF can launch concrete and tangible policies with concrete findings. So we consulted young people many times. You mentioned the survey, but in 2022, following the survey, an international network was shaped. Youths in the Francophonie, it's a global network, a digital ecosystem. Young people can get some training, they can get some support for entrepreneurship, tutoring projects, and the objective is to help them as part of their professional trajectory. During the last summit of Francophonie in Paris last October, we invited young people and they were with the head of states in one afternoon, and they were able to exchange their views with the heads of state. So they were very close to the heads of state at the same table. Hence, the imperious need for training, for getting access to information so that they could create their own projects. And what is important is to make sure that young people are being recruited by businesses with the right skills. We implemented two programs, two flagship programs. Young people in Francophonie, more than 320 million people speaking French, French-speaking people. This is a common language. Unlike the figures that were mentioned, people aged between 18 and 35 years of age, they account for 60% of the population. There's a sense of urgency. So we expanded some efforts in order to develop economic missions, and we worked with some companies, and they will visit a host country, and French-speaking companies will be able to meet one another. They can do some business, and there will be some business opportunities, and young people can be recruited. Regarding the digital technologies, we have a flagship program, Déclic. It is a program that has been scaled. So the ambition is to train tens of thousands of young people in the French-speaking area on the continent, on the African continent, so that they can get the basic fundamental skills for the basic professions, mobile development, web development, and we are targeting the jobs of today, the jobs of tomorrow regarding cybersecurity, blockchain, and artificial intelligence, of course. Thanks a lot, Florence, for shedding a light on your organization. Your organization is an asset of Francophonie. It doesn't boil down to France. I mean, Francophonie means English, French-speaking countries, rather. It's a very good transition. I will hand over to Mme Didier, Minister for Youth, in professional integration and civic service. This is quite a topical issue in France. You will be elaborating on young people in Côte d'Ivoire and in on the African continent. Thanks a lot for inviting me. I'm delighted to be with you. I think that you've made an appraisal of the situation of young people, how demographics in Africa can be an asset for the world of tomorrow. 1.5 billion people in Africa and 1.1 billion young people. In 2050, 2.5 billion people. And out of the 2.5 billion people, 1.9 billion people will be under 35 years of age. In Côte d'Ivoire, we have 30 million inhabitants. 15% of the population is young, about 22 million people. So for us, it's a bonanza, but there are lots of challenges as well to take up. We have 6 million teachers who don't have a job. So I think that 9 million classrooms, but there's a shortage of teachers to the tune of 15%. So we need to come up with some structural answers in order to meet the challenges having to do with training, employability of young people. It could be a time bomb for the world. And for past 15 years in Côte d'Ivoire, youths have taken center stage, a national policy for young people, integration policy for young people, and President Ouattara 3 years ago was eager to launch young programs with the government. And we have 21 sectorial ministers on training, entrepreneurship, civic commitment, the role of young people as citizens. We are living in a tough world. Lots of conflicts in Mali, in Burkina Faso. And young people are very vulnerable, and the terrorist movements have exploited young people. So we managed to get an impact on 2.5 million people, and the initial objective was 1.5 million. So young people are a priority. So young people were taken on board. Most of the time, policies have to focus on young people. With those public policies, we decided to take on board young people. In this room, we have the president of the Regional Council of Côte d'Ivoire, and with 300 organizations, they got together and they focused on some themes. They worked out their vision and their tangible proposals. And then we've made an appraisal with the government, and that's why today we can disseminate this strategy geared towards young people with AI now. We consider that this is an opportunity. You talked about constraints connected with debt, the dearth of resources as part of the development partnerships. We want to get enough wherewithal to build the classrooms, not enough resources to recruit teachers. So AI and the new training technologies constitute an opportunity in order to take up the challenge of facilities for African countries. Thanks a lot, Minister. You've opened up many avenues. Now, Danielle, ALAKIJA, I think you come from the SOLI group, maybe in English.
Et nous expliquer ce que vous faites pour les jeunes.
What do you do for young people?
Absolutely. And you're all going to have to forgive me for speaking in English, but I think it might be a bit kinder than stumbling through my secondary school French for the next couple of minutes. And so to speak a little bit about the SOLI group and what I do, I founded the organization back in 2022, just coming out of the COVID pandemic. And what we are is a narrative and advocacy-based hub for the Global South. specifically for the youth of the Global South. And I find the easiest way to explain that work to people is that what we do is we use storytelling to highlight the human effect of climate change, of crisis, of social and political unrest, and to remind people that while statistics are incredibly important, and while data is incredibly important, there is still a human effect to these crises that we have going on around the world today. Now, to speak from a personal level to this, even to the title of our session, you know, how should youth-focused policies be designed? I would have one slight suggestion to that, which is to say, I don't think they should be youth-focused. And the minister's made an excellent point there when he said that youth take the center stage. And we have to begin to truly center youth at the heart of everything we do. Because when we almost separate out the youth in our policy design, in the work that we do, when we say that here is a youth delegation, here is a youth delegate to sit upon the panel, I say this being the youth delegate that is sitting upon this panel, there is something that happens, and that is that the youth voice becomes secondary. And it's viewed as you are here to learn. It's viewed as you are here to gain from the experience of others around you. And that is incredibly important, and it's incredibly valuable, and it's not to denigrate that in any way, but we have to start to allow young people to be the drivers of their own future. It's quite often I hear, you know, what we give the youth, what the youth will inherit, what we are going to bequeath to the youth in the future. And for me personally, we have to move away from that language. It's not about giving the youth a future. It's about standing aside at a certain point and letting them create their own. Because the reality is young people are not the future. They are right now. And when we talk about youth, first of all, it's always very funny because the definition varies from region to region, from country to country. There are places where I am not at all considered a youth, and they look at me and I'm called an auntie. And there are places where I am considered so young that my opinion is almost dismissed and, like I said, considered secondary. But the reality is the youth are so fast moving that they speak a different language, and they speak a language of urgency, which is desperately, desperately needed in today's context. When we design youth-focused policies, you know, it's often by the time that they are designed, they are brought through focus groups, they are then implemented. The young people that they were designed for are no longer young, and they are now in their 40s and their 50s, and they have become leaders in their own right. And the next generation that has come up behind them has vastly different needs and requirements. I speak a completely different language in my 20s than my cousins and my younger siblings, and so in their teen years, you know, and they will speak a vastly different language to the younger generation beneath them coming up. With the digital landscapes that we are now completely integrated into, where, you know, it feels like everywhere you look, AI is inescapable. Whether it's you get on Google and you type in, and all of a sudden you have a Gemini survey summary in front of you that you did not ask for. Whether it is, you know, you are in WhatsApp and it is creating transcript notes of your call and your messages and asking, what can I do for you? It's young people that design these systems, and therefore it's young people that are going to be able to save them in the future. Now, to go back to my work with the SOLI group to wrap up and talk about that storytelling component, when we tell the stories of young people, when we center the stories of young people, we give them an agency and we give them a power to, like I said, go ahead and create that better future that they know is possible. Because the reality is, it is their future. And it's my future as well. And it's my generation that are looking down the barrel of, do we have children? Do we not have children? Is it the responsible thing to do to relocate to what may be considered a climate danger zone? I am Nigerian by heritage, but I grew up in the Fiji Islands. And I had a conversation very recently where someone said to me, Danielle, you live in London. Why did you move? Why would you ever move? And I said, that's a very good point. Why did I move to London? I said, when I have Fiji available to me. But the reality is that the Pacific is sinking. And the Pacific is day by day falling into the sea. And that is a case of millions of people, millions of young people who, to be perfectly honest with you, are not looking at a future of 2050 or 2075. They're looking at a future of the next hurricane season. They're looking at a future of the next flood season in 2026, where are they going to survive? Is their home still going to be there? Is their island still going to be there in 5 to 10 years' time? So if there's one call to action that I could make, and I'm delighted to hear that we have young people in the room, it is that you should absolutely grab that microphone and raise your voice, because it's the only way we are going to build that better future for ourselves.
Thank you very much. Merci d'avoir partagé avec nous cette expérience.
Thank you for sharing that experience. It's highly enriching. I think you're raising the question, aren't you? This idea of empowerment of young people and it being possible today. And people in power need to understand that. Perhaps it's Didier Guillau's turn now, given your experience as an entrepreneur in various sectors. And today, given the position that you occupy, so the real subject is, what are we passing down to young people? Is it just debt, or are there some assets? So let's think about that. And you know, our young people who want to be entrepreneuring, what about them? Thank you. Hello, everybody. So I was asked to talk as the head of a business with respect to this question of youth today. And I started by looking at the adverts drawn up by the Cercle des économistes. And there were 2 or 3 figures that attracted me. And so I'll talk about that. And then I'll talk as somebody in charge of a company and communication. And I'll then talk about the problems generated by the study. What does it say? Well, we hear about the digital divide, cultural divide, the land area divide, territorial divide. I won't go back over those things. But when we question young people, and this was done by Le Cercle des économistes, so the 18 to 13-year-olds, 74% of them don't feel as though they're represented or they're underrepresented. 41% feel they're not protected, and that's something that really did make me scratch my head. 45% say that they don't feel good about their life, and 79% feel that they don't have enough support when they're looking for their first jobs. So this means for me that there's a form of permanent invisibility, if I may use that term. That's what they're feeling, our 18 to 30-year-olds. And so they need to be reassured that we need to talk to them, they need to have a voice, and they need to be supported. So how can we go about that when you're a business head? Well, my company is a communication company. It's an external communication specialist. So we provide advertising, basically. We've got 800 employees in 23 regional agencies across France. So we're lucky to have a really good territorial mesh, and we've got local presence, and perhaps our actions can go quite far. So as a communication company, the first challenge when it comes to the point that we are talking about is to work on being close, on being rooted locally, and to make sure that 50% of our displays are given to local authorities so that they can communicate with young people, with their young people, and allow them to express themselves. Now, here's another example that concerns us, but it concern other companies in communication. So we've got partnerships, and we've got a partnership with Brut, and we distribute advertising here in Aix-en-Provence, but in other regions, in different municipalities. So we provide young people editorial content that they like, and we also allow them to say what they have to say. We've created an editorial platform called Bonjour Cityz, and young people can produce, they can post content in order to talk and take part in the life of the city and be fully involved in the life of the city. Our media, it's based on proximity, but it's also a popular media, and it's the anti-social media platform with our proximity, where we're in the street, we're seen, we're heard by everybody. And I consider that we're lucky from that respect. We're an anti-social media, we're an anti-social media bubble company. Now, talking about the company more specifically, when I arrived in the company that I bought 18 months ago, I heard about people working from home. I'm going to tell you what I'm trying to do in my company to support young people, to reassure them and take into account their aspirations. And I might come across as being quite provocative. When I arrived, I was like anybody in a company in France or elsewhere. I was wondering about people working from home, and so that there were 2 weeks of 2 days allowed every week of for people to work from home, and I thought that that was not great. Then I realized that it was an employability criterion for people, but also a criterion that helped with the work-personal life balance. So I agreed not to go back over the agreement of 2 days a week working from home. I wanted my company to be more dynamic, have people that who were more engaged. So in order to do that, I knew that I had to keep those 2 days a week. It's a detail, but it's very important if you want to contribute to that balance. So we're working on how to develop so that it doesn't undermine the company, but we don't want to revise it. Apprenticeship, there are 800 employees in our company. 45 of those people are apprentices, and this was a choice to have 45 apprentices. That's a lot. That's 5% of the staff numbers, and it means that we are giving those young people a chance, because they provide energy, they're inquisitive, and the idea is to revitalize the company. And so I pushed to have 45 apprentices this year. When I arrived in 2023, let me look at my figures just so that I'm not getting it wrong. 3% of under 30s were part of the company. In 2024, there are fewer. So we've got to prepare for the future, and we've got to work with the Grandes Écoles. We launched a partnership with the media chair of ESSEC, another école, a school. So it's not just about having students on sandwich courses, it's about having graduates. So we've set up sponsoring and mentoring, and we work with people from the ESSEC school. And we create advertising, that's our profession. So we've decided to work with digital and format advertising. We want to work with freelancers, young freelancers who don't work in existing advertising agencies. We want to reward them and promote their talent by promoting their content. So these are just some very practical examples of what we're doing. I think each company head has a role to play and needs to ask the questions that I ask myself. You know, how can I go about things and reassure and support young people and give them a voice? Thank you, Didier, for that very concrete example. I think that's probably brought up quite a few questions. We'll go round the table, continue to go round with Nouzha CHEKROUNI, Senior Fellow at the Policy Centre for the New South, or the Global South. We've heard about that. Perhaps you'll be talking about Morocco, which is your country, and the relationship of young people to political democracy. Thank you for your invitation. Hello, everybody. So effectively, when I was invited to talk about young peoples in the plural, I realized that this was quite a good idea. You know, it's not a homogeneous category, after all. There's a kind of existential experience. There are a lot of aspirations, and there are lots of young people who are looking for meaning, who are looking for an identity, and they're looking at, you know, how to move from what's possible to what's real. And so I thought that I could maybe provide an answer to the question of young people. You know, what world are we going to leave behind for these young people? That's the question I asked. And I was thinking about empowerment. So I said to myself, I need to get involved, because the future is in the hands of our young people. And it's via a co-building of that future that we can all rise to the challenges of today in a world that is sometimes chaotic. But in Africa, in my country, the country of Morocco, we're convinced that in difficult times, when there are crises, that's when a new world can be reborn. And that's where our responsibility is to reinvent that world and rebuild it together. I'm not talking about handing down the world. I'm talking about co-building. I'm talking about getting cultures to talk together, getting generations to talk together. We have 400 million young people in Africa. 60% of Africa are young people. That's an enormous amount of potential, but there are enormous challenges too. Now, commitment or citizens' engagement seems to be very important. We know that many young people are not very attracted to political structures. They're no longer very attractive, these politically attractive, and that's why policymakers, decision makers need to do something. Young people are reinventing, activism, and so it's important to take these new forms into account. Social media, digitalization today, artificial intelligence are really drivers, not of expression, but also of education and contribution and participation. So we need to all think together. We need to think about opening up the spectrum, widening the spectrum in terms of young people's participation so that they have a lot more space, so that they have many more opportunities, so that we listen to them as well, and so that we can see them in action as well. Now, there are a number of points here that I would like to bring up. Demographic dynamics and innovation. As I was saying, young people today, many of them are innovating in different fields, in agriculture, in the world of ecology. There's the question of feminism that is being dealt with differently by them. But there's also the question of employment and social aspects. There are new things that are creating wealth. And then there's the question of citizen and associative engagement, where we're seeing an increasing mobilization on behalf of young people on social media. So they're working towards a more democratic environment. And it's about supporting changes within our society. We saw the Arab Spring, the African Spring, and we've seen many ecological initiatives on behalf of young people. But there are also answers. What policies should we be setting up for young people? And that is where states have a role to play, but also other stakeholders. I'll talk about what we do. When you look at the consultation-based process, it tells us how many young people we have, what their employment rate is. I don't think that's sufficient, that approach. It has to be backed up by a qualitative approach that is based on experience, on aspirations, socio-cultural stalemates, and local dynamics that have an influence on young people's participation. This is something that needs to be analyzed. We need to look into stories and histories and experience. So let's talk about our Africa now. How do we go out to meet our roots? It's important to understand norms and the representations that young people have, their social representations, their relationship with power, with government, with politics, and also their idea of engagement. So we need space, we need mechanisms, and that's what we work on in the Policy Center for the New South as part of the Atlantic Dialogue, which is a leading event that we organize in the Policy Center. We have the Emerging Leaders program as well, and Danielle is a product of that program. It's a program that empowers young people. It gives them possibility of coming together. It offers them a space, not just so that they can say what they have to say, but also so that they can give us their vision of the world. This world that we are trying to build together in a dialogue with their peers in the New South, but it's something that's also open to the South. It's as part of that opening, but with a vision that, you know, is in line with our aspirations. A new South, a new world, thanks to an involved youth. So Adele, so the Emerging Leaders program, it's not just a space for meetings. It's a space for co-building, because they're already correcting the problems, the current problems. In that space, you might meet 50% of young girls and 50% of young women, 50% of young men. So there's more visibility for women, because it's important to maintain that visibility. The question of democracy is fundamental. It cannot be limited just to a vote. It also has to involve other actions. It should be about freeing up young people so that they can have a new approach. Then there's Morocco, of course. So we organized the Kalong we will be organizing football in 2030, but in football there's a lot of empowerment as well. There's governance. And to finish, I'd just like to say something. These actions at the Policy Center, it's not just about creating opportunities, spot opportunities. The idea is to do something for the long term, so that the project grows, so that young people can be properly supported and be reassured about the future. So it's not an act of generosity that we are making, it's an act of lucidity. Thank you. Thank you. So you went over the original 3 minutes, but that's okay. You know, we're a caring audience, so we don't have much time, but let me open up the debate to those who have something to say. There are microphones in the room. Let's start with the young lady here. Could you just introduce yourself and then give us a question? Yes, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. And thank you to our panelists. My name is Ajaba. I'm from Guinea. I'm a militant and activist. I defend human rights. And I'm delighted to see the Minister of Youth from the Côte d'Ivoire, because that's very close to Guinea. We share the same realities. And I'm also delighted to see the FIO, they're part of African youth. My question is, what is the real role of all of the young people? We talk about the World Network of Youth, what is the role of Guinea? Because I don't know what it is. I don't know any young people from my country who are part of the network. We are militants, we're out there in the field, we know what the realities are, and if there are spaces created for young people, well, it's not the United Nations that we're talking about. We're talking about Francophonie organizations. It's not the United Nations that are going to give us the space. It's spaces like that, focused on Francophonie, open to young people, and they need to serve a purpose. But if I can just continue, I have a question for the gentleman. We don't always have opportunities like this. Minister, today with what's happening in the Côte d'Ivoire, we know that there's an awful lot of tension and opposition. What is your opinion of Mr. Ouattara's policy for young people? Because there is a huge risk for young people. It's like in Burkina or Mali or some of the other countries that you've cited, there is a lot of risk for young people. Minister, if you could maybe answer that. You already mentioned those risks. Yes, thank you very much. So the Côte d'Ivoire is an exception today compared with what's happening in other countries. Very early, President Ouattara thought it was very important to prioritize policies for young people. So there's a lot of growth in our country. We've got an average growth over the past 15 years of 6%. So we've tripled our GDP. We've reduced poverty by 3 points, and that's quite exceptional in Africa today. And that economic dynamic is continuing. It's supported by proactive approaches, and that's what we're trying to do. So that means that we're not allowing young people to be manipulated. Of course, we have to work with them, we have to listen to them, we have to take into account their aspirations, etc. So we are operating democratically, and things will take place in good conditions. 10 years ago, there was a post-electoral crisis. So there was fraud in the voting system, but things have changed since then. And now we have a stable country, and you will see proof of that in a few months' time. So, a microphone over here, please. Yes, a young man. Perhaps we can take 2 questions, but can we have just questions, please? Hello, everybody. I'm a member of the a youth circle. I'm also doing a bachelor's. My question is for the minister. It's a pleasure for me to meet him here inside the Rencontre économique in Aix-en-Provence. So in terms of economic cooperation and development, we know that there are 2 million Côte d'Ivoire people who are abroad, and we've still got a lot of debt, 2.2 million in debt. 5% of the population are under 30, so about 50% of the foreign population, so 60,000 young people concerned. So my question is, what policy can be set up for young people from outside? So we'll take a second question first. Oh, it's the same, okay? Yes? Hello. I'm an economist and political scientist at the USAF. I have a question for all of the panelists. How can we make sure that demographic divergence between Europe and Africa is a source of opportunity rather than a source of pressure? Very good question. We'll start with our minister from the Côte d'Ivoire and the diaspora. How do you keep talent as well in Africa? Well, for 15 years, we've been trying to work with the diaspora, and I'm delighted with the feedback. Lots of young people in the country. It's good to have people leaving who pick up a great experience elsewhere. So for 15 years, we've been trying to mobilize those young people. And there are lots of young people who, after their training, after experience acquired in Europe, they decide to come back to the country to seize the opportunities to be directors, and our responsibility is to create the right kind of environment for their return. And to do this, we need to reduce any divides. If somebody like yourself is here in France, rather than in the Côte d'Ivoire, it's because the opportunities, the infrastructures are different, and that's why we're focusing on the reduction of divides, the digital divides, cultural, the question of electricity. So we're working in different fields. We've made lots of progress in terms of electricity production, the coverage rate. When President Ouattara, he's increased it. We have 94% electricity coverage now. The roads, we have got 2,000 kilometers of road built to allow more traffic and circulation of people. So we'll be able to transport thousands of people. And what about your attractiveness? Yes, and we're a lot more attractive. Perhaps, Florence, BRILLOUIN, you can talk about the second question. Yes, thank you. I'll perhaps open a parenthesis before I answer that question. With respect to the first question that was raised, it's an important point that was raised. Yes, we're very concerned to the FOI, at the FIO. So about young people, we've heard some terrible figures with respect to the African continent, and things can only go up. So, and the women inside the youth, they're at the heart of what we do. They're often put to one side. So we have to create, and since 2022, the network has been working. Lots of young people are connecting up. But of course, it's important to have a certain mastery of these digital tools. And these digital tools need to be available to the most invisible young people. So from the point of North and South young people. Yes, exactly. Obviously, We've looked into that problem, which is fairly basic, and that's why in training on digital tools, where we want to allow young people to acquire skills, just being able to use computers. Well, over half of our programs target peri-urban or rural areas. In other words, we're really going to go out to see these young people. We don't leave them by the side of the road. So we've got 2 minutes to go. And to answer the last question, yes, the Francophonie space, north-south, we never considered that the diversity was an obstacle. It really is a source of opportunity. So we have this, we have lots of different economic events, and we're seeing how there are technology transfers of knowledge, not necessarily from north to south. Yes, there are investments, obviously, but there's also, you know, people come to find talent in Africa, and that's also interesting for company. And that's why we have, during the last economic mission in Benin a few weeks ago, we took with us a whole cohort of young people so that they could meet up with a range of companies. We can't solve all of the problems. Let's take 2 last questions, the gentleman there and the gentleman there. And then I'll have to stop, otherwise I'll be told off. Yes, hello. My name is Alexandre Chelin. I'm in the second year at the mining school in Saint-Etienne. So we talked about the geopolitical context and anxiety of young people. I think we need to think about technology as well. 89% of young people between 18 and 13 say they have a phone, and about 12%, well, more than that, spend over 5 hours on their telephone. So if you are given an object that you don't understand, you're increasing psychological risk. There's the addiction to screens, yes. And then 1 Haiti person out of 10 has attempted to kill themselves. How can we think about integrating new technologies in a more cautious way, given the psychosocial risks? Yes. There's a gentleman there with a beard who would like to ask a question. Can we let him ask his question? Yes, thank you. Not too long. Don't worry. So it's how can we not consult people and make sure that they are present? We're talking a lot about young people, but we don't always invite them. How can we make sure that they're part of board of directors, that they are in decision-making spaces rather than leaving them in consultation spaces? I think that everybody understands that. Who would like to say something about that? And then we'll have to stop because we've already run over. I absolutely agree with you about this. Yes, how do we get them to be in the decision-making area, not just in the consultation area? We've got to start by abolishing obstacles, notably the obstacle of age. We've got to give them that possibility. There are so many sectors where they can invent and create new forms, but the doors have to be opened. So we've got to take into account your aspirations. Patrice, would you like to conclude? Maybe answer the question on addictions? Yes, well, come tomorrow morning, go to the youth forum, where we'll be focusing on youth health problems. So that question will probably come up. So thank you to our speakers. Now, I think there are more reasons to hope at the end of our discussion rather than at the beginning. And this is what I say to my students. It's not because my generation, our generations, were behind a certain number of problems that these young people are faced with, that they won't find solutions. Yes, take power. Take over the power. Thank you.